on Law Weekly, we discuss the human rights situation in the country. We have the views of the former president of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, Boma Ayomide Alabi. Boma is a cross-border solicitor and officer of the Order of Nigeria, OON, who is passionate about judicial reforms, the protection of human rights, particularly women and child rights, as well as replicating global standards here in Nigeria. We also have the assessment of some senior lawyers on Nigeria's human rights record, plus our recap of the top trending stories from the courtrooms. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Shuyeli. December 10 is International Human Rights Day. Human rights are the inalienable rights that are without presumption or cost or privilege to all human beings. It is unlawful for people to be abused or denied of their human rights for any reason except when it is lawful to do so. However, study after study appears to show that a lot of people do not even know their rights, and so they do not know when their rights are being abused and how to fight for their rights to avoid further abuse. It is for these reasons that the United Nations General Assembly in 1948 adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as the first global expression to protect the rights of everyone worldwide. In Nigeria, the rights are provided for in the 1999 Constitution. The fundamental human rights are entrenched in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. The section provides for the right to life, right to freedom of movement, right to freedom from discrimination on the grounds of sex, race, tribe, creed, political opinion or association, the right to fair and equal hearing, and the right to private and family life. Others are the right to freedom of expression and the press, right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, right to peaceful assembly or association, right to personal liberty, right to vote and be voted for in any given election, and a right to education. Since the return to democracy in 1999, every government has expressed total commitment to the enshrinement and enforcement of these fundamental rights. But the reality on ground is radically different, as most rights are still not being enforced. In Nigeria, many people believe that the International Human Rights Day provides an opportunity for deep and sober reflections on how to comply fully with the provisions of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights in line with international conventions. On the program today, Mrs. Boma Ayomide Alabi speaks most especially about the protection of the rights of the vulnerable in the society. I began though by asking a general assessment of the human rights situation in the country, particularly under this government.
Let me start with the positive. This government has instituted a school feeding program, which I think is really laudable. We tend to forget that children's rights are human rights too. There are a lot of children who are living in abject poverty. What that means is they're not getting nutritious meals, they're not getting 3 square meals a day, they're not getting the right care, not because their parents don't love them, but because they simply cannot afford to give them those basic rights of a child. It's embedded in our Child Rights Act, and therefore that's where the state has to step in. In every civilized society, that's what happens. You find in England, for instance, and other places, the social services will step in where the parents are unable to look after the children. So that is beginning to happen, and I'm very pleased that this government has instituted it, and I believe that it will carry on going forward because it's been budgeted for. Now it's a line item. Hopefully it should carry on in that way. That's on the positive. We have a long way to go in so many other ways. I know that we have challenges with our resources. Nonetheless, I think it's a question of what we prioritize in this society. So for instance, we have a lot of Nigerians, citizens of this country, awaiting trial, caught up in the justice system without justice. Each of those individuals is innocent until proven guilty. That's what our law says. And therefore, they have a right to speedy trials so that one way or the other you can say if you're guilty, serve your term. If you're not, then get on with your life. And in those cases where these individuals are found to be innocent, there's no compensation. Their life and time in jail, it's just as though nothing has happened. I mean, I've been involved with the Oyo State Ministry of Justice, assisting with access to justice. And I can tell you, for instance, I have the statistics in Agodi prison in Oyo State. Let's say approximately 1,200 to 300 detainees. Out of that number, over 900 are awaiting trial. So that gives you an indication. And the period they're incarcerated ranges from, a matter of weeks to years.
And it's reflective of most of our prisons.
Precisely, and that's just across the board. You need to look at how citizens feel. Are they empowered? Do they feel like stakeholders in their own communities? And you find that most Nigerians do not. So when we do not feel confident to go and report a crime or a suspected crime to the police who are supposed to protect us, then we have a long way to go in human rights. When we're campaigning for the abolition of SARS, which is the Special Armed Robbery Unit, which is supposed to be protecting us, then clearly something has gone awry. And therefore, that would be one that I would use, where as citizens, because if you have the police force, they're paid for by our taxes, by our resources, and they're there for our protection. But we feel totally disconnected from them. We feel threatened by them largely. We don't see them as a protective force. We see them as a threatening and, hostile force. The same goes for, the non-civil forces, such as the military and so on. I know there's a history to that. And perhaps that would have to go to education, because I actually have to say military has been doing a sterling job of fighting terrorism